For nearly 5 decades, hip-hop and rap has slowly taken over the music industry and began topping charts just a decade into it. From Run DMC to Tupac, Biggie to Jay-Z, and Eminem to Kendrick Lamar, hip-hop and rap have become the new rock stars. But it wasn't always this way. This multi-billion-dollar industry had its roots in violence and gang activity. So we'll just take a deep dive into history and explore how it started from the humble beginnings and evolved into a global phenomenon by looking into what some would call the godfather of hip-hop. Hip-hop currently is a worldwide commodity that has made millions and billions of dollars, but many people rich, especially people that came from the bottom. However, the borough that gave rise to hip-hop is still among the poorest in the country. In 1953, a guy named Robert Moses was planning to build the Cross Bronx Expressway in New York City. He wanted to make Manhattan the center of business and wealth by allowing people to travel from the suburbs of New Jersey through Upper Manhattan and out to the suburbs of Queens in just 15 minutes. The construction was part of the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, aimed at constructing thousands of miles of interstate highways to connect all big cities in America. The goal was to create fast and safe cross-country travel. Sounds pretty cool, right? However, the expressway construction came at a huge cost to America's urban community. Over 60,000 Bronx residents were stuck in the expressway's middle. In addition, the highway served as a line separating the North and South Bronx, highlighting their distinct cultures and economies. Alongside the poor living conditions that the people in these Bronx neighborhoods were forced to endure, unemployment increased at an astounding rate. 600,000 manufacturing jobs had been lost by the mid-70s, and 30,000 fires had been started in the South Bronx alone. Schools lacked adequate funding and maintenance because the city didn't really throw money their way. Both political groups, the Black Panthers and the Young Lords, assisted the neighborhood through breakfast programs, garbage collection, and newspaper operations to educate residents about the city's pervasive discrimination and corruption. All of this caused an increase in gang activity that fought for power and territory. One of those gangs was the Black Spades. The gang formed in 1968 in the Bronxdale houses in the Soundview section of the Bronx. The name the Black Spades was used from the beginning. Despite rumors that they were first called the Savage Seven, originally it was a gang of young people who adopted the ideologies of the Black Panthers, the Weather Underground, Malcolm X, and the Nation of Islam. The Spades were established to combat racism and bigotry in the Bronx's Soundview, Clayson Point, Parkchester, Castle Hill, and Throgs Neck neighborhoods under the direction of the organization's first president, David Brockington, who was a member of the Nation of Islam. In response to the increase in crime, drug traffickers and heroin addicts who started to take over the neighborhood, the 1st Division Black Spades set the law and guarded Bronxdale houses. The gang quickly spread throughout the Bronx and the nearby housing projects in the Soundview neighborhood, creating a subculture that encouraged music in gang members' lives. The various gangs each had their own music in the 70s. They walked around with a box radio blasting their favorite hits. For example, the Ohio Players' Fire served as the theme song for the 25th Division of the Black Spades. Likewise, Jungle Boogie was also used by the Black Spades. In the 70s, every gang or crew had a song or artist that they identified with as their theme song. The Black Spades had grown in size by the start of the 70s, and its members started to lose sight of the original goal. Other gang divisions went unchecked, and the Black Spades turned violent. David Brockington resigned as 1st Division president because he didn't like how things were going. After that, Monk took over as Black Spades president as the group evolved into a full-fledged street gang. In 1971, South Bronx gangs were also making headlines across the country. The New York Times described the South Bronx as the capital of teenage gang power, noting that there were at least 85 gangs and thousands of gang members there. In addition, young men frequently died in the streets due to violent turf wars. It was clear that the violence had gotten out of hand. The South Bronx gangs met that same year to discuss how to reduce the violence and strengthen their groups in the eyes of the community. The real test came in December 1971 with Cornell Benjamin, also known as Black Benji. He was a member of the Ghetto Brothers and went to negotiate with 3 gangs coming down from Hunts Point. They were beating up people along the way, coming to get the territory from the Roman kings. After attempting to negotiate with those Hunts Point gangs, Black Benji was reportedly beaten to death. Gangs all over the borough were outraged by the murder of an unarmed gang member who was pleading for peace. Many demanded war, however, Benji's mom prayed for peace. On December 7, 1971, over 100 South Bronx gang leaders attended the Hoe Avenue peace meeting. As they entered, both young men and women were frisked. Local reporters were present, and in case things got out of control, police snipers were stationed across the street. The meeting was tense, and it lasted for hours. The venting and mediation worked. Finally, the gangs agreed to a truce outside the media spotlight. They met at the abandoned storefront that served as the Ghetto Brothers' headquarters and signed a detailed agreement with specific rules. Although the 1971 Peace Summit did not put an end to the violence, it did foreshadow a long-term trend of violent crime reduction in the Bronx. Harold Mayerson says this trend is still in place today, even though the South Bronx is still the country's poorest district. Like most urban areas, the Bronx has seen a huge decline in crime. In 1990, it was the site of 653 murders. In 2014, just 95. In the 41st Police Precinct, the notorious Fort Apache murders declined from 44 in 1990 to 4 last year. In the adjoining 40th Precinct in the South Bronx's Mott Haven neighborhood, they went from 72 in 1990 to 7 last year. According to Lance Africa Bambaataa Taylor, the peace meeting really helped. Bambaataa was present at the meeting as a member of the Black Spades. It helped to slow down a lot of beef. It took a lot of stress and sticking together to keep all these different groups under that whole family or truce that the Ghetto Brothers, Brother Benji, has put forward for everybody to come under. However, he's much more than just a gang member. Some would say he's one of the godfathers, if not the godfather of hip-hop. Africa Bambaataa was raised in the Bronx River Projects by his mother and uncle, and his family background goes back to Jamaica and Barbados. He had knowledge of the Black liberation movement as a young child and heard his mother and uncle argue about the opposing philosophies of the movement. In addition, he was exposed to his mother's vast and varied record collection. Bambaataa quickly rose to the position of the warlord of one of the divisions of the Black Spades. As one of the head guys, his job was to build ranks and expand the turf of the young Spades. In addition, he was not afraid to cross territory to develop relationships with other gangs and their members. As a result, the Spades became the biggest gang in the city in terms of both membership and turf. Around the mid-70s, Bambaataa entered an essay contest and won. The trip to Africa, which would change his life and help establish what we now know as hip-hop. However, Africa wasn't the first trip he won. Well, in '74, there was a thing with UNICEF, and people had to write an essay on why they would want to go visit. At the time, it was India, so I won the essay to go to India. But when it was time for me to meet the decision staff, I was giving out flyers for one of my parties I was having, so I missed that trip to India. So the next year was a trip to Africa, so I really bust my ass on the essay for that one, and I won that one. When Bambaataa came home, he was a different person. He realized his place in the world was far more meaningful than just being the warlord of a gang. He then started looking into Clive DJ Kool Herc Campbell's work. Bambaataa started planning block parties all over the South Bronx as soon as a fellow DJ let him borrow his first equipment. He even competed in a DJ battle against a close friend, Disco King Mario. He later founded the Bronx River Organization, later known simply as The Organization, and started performing at Stevenson High School. He already had a solid party crowd made up of former gang members due to his prior status in the Black Spades. He earned a reputation as one of the biggest DJs in the Bronx. Gangs such as the Savage Nomads, Seven Immortals, and Savage Skulls, among others, provided additional members to the group, which had the Black Spades at its core. He did a job uniting many of them. Members started planning cultural activities for kids, fusing regional dance and music styles into what would later be referred to as the various components of hip-hop culture. At the time, the style involved sequencing popular songs from other genres, primarily disco and pop, and then using a turntable to record over them, shortening or looping the samples, or adding a new beat. We had people who would do b-boy and b-girl someplace, and others who would do graffiti art in another area. We had people who would DJ and MC in another area, so I decided to tell them, let's come together under this banner, and this became the birth of the hip-hop movement and the hip-hop culture. He was influenced by a wide range of Black political figures in terms of ideology at the time. For example, he watched the movie Zulu, which was based on the 1879 conflict between British forces and the Zulu tribe in South Africa. Before being overpowered by the number of Zulus who chose to spare their lives, the British appeared to have won. From the movie, he adopted the name Africa Bambaataa, which meant affectionate leader. In 1976, he changed the organization's name to the Zulu Nation. I always had visions and always felt I was sent to do a job or something for the creator. So that was always on my mind, to start this organization and to do things, especially when we started getting into the knowledge and we got out of the negativity and into the positivity. Under Bambaata's leadership, the Universal Zulu Nation began organizing hip-hop events and gatherings in the South Bronx. These events provided a space for young people to showcase their creativity and talent in various aspects of hip-hop culture, such as DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti art. The Universal Zulu Nation also played an essential role in promoting social and political awareness among young people. Bambaata believed that hip-hop could be used as a platform to address issues such as poverty, racism, and police brutality. He encouraged members of the movement to use their creative talents to raise awareness about these issues and to inspire positive change in their communities. He made his record industry debut as a producer with Soul Sonic Force's Zulu Nation Throwdown in 1980. The song served as a rallying cry for the Zulu Nation, a collective of like-minded Afrocentric musicians who had been influencing hip-hop crews since the late 70s. Afrika Bambaataa didn't start recording as a recording artist until 1982, despite having additional production credits on a few later singles from 80 and 81. In 1982, hip-hop artist Fab Five Freddy Braithwaite was putting together music packages in the predominantly white downtown Manhattan new wave clubs. He invited Bambaata to perform at one of them, the Mud Club. It was the first time Bambaata performed before a largely white crowd, making it one of the first times hip-hop would hit a different market into white culture, or white American culture. Attendance for his parties became so big that he had to move to larger venues such as Ritz, Peppermint Lounge, the Jefferson, and the Roxy. The crowd loved him. Oh, they were funky. They got loose. They liked the stuff I was playing. Ohio Players, Kool and the Gang, Jungle Boogie, all that stuff. Mixed with the break beats and the disco stuff. Once I was getting more into the rock pool and hearing a lot of punk rock records, I started playing a lot of their stuff. Flying Lizards and all that other type of things that I might think that would get over there. And that's when my following started happening. In June 1982, Afrika Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force released a popular track, Planet Rock. The song used musical elements from German rock, funk, and electropop. Hip-hop was developed as a new vision for international harmony by fusing the various components and musical genres. The song quickly took off, even charting in the UK. The song combined the main melody from Kraftwerk's Trans-Europe Express with electronic beats from their song Numbers, as well as excerpts from records by Babe Ruth and Captain Sky to create an entirely new genre of music called electro-funk. It influenced various electronic and dance music genres including techno, house, and freestyle music. Bambaata organized the first European hip-hop tour the same year. Along with himself were rapper and graffiti artist Rem LZ, B-boy and B-girl crews, Rocksteady Crew, Zulu Nation, DJ Grand Mixer DXT, and the Double Dutch Girls, as well as graffiti artists Fab Five Freddy, Phase 2, Futura 2000, and Dondi. Bambaata's second track, Looking for the Perfect Beat, came in 1983. Then later, Renegades of Funk. Both of them with the same Soul Sonic Force. After that, he began working with producer Bill Laswell at Gene Caraco's Celluloid Records. He developed and placed two groups on the label, Time Zone and Shango. He recorded Wild Style with Time Zone and a collaboration with punk rocker John Lydon and Time Zone in 1984 titled World Destruction. Bambaata and other well-known hip-hop figures appeared in the movie Beat Street that same year. Together with James Brown, he also produced the historic record Unity. Bambaata collaborated with Little Steven Van Zandt, Run DMC, Lou Reed, and many other musicians on the anti-apartheid album Sun City in the fall of 1985. He released The Light, a historic song featuring Nana Hendrix, UB40, George Clinton, Boy George, Bootsy Collins, and Yellowman as Afrika Bambaataa and Family on Capitol Records in 1988. He had collaborated with Family on a few other projects 3 years prior, including Funk You in 1985 and Beware, The Funk Is Everywhere in 1986. Bambaata was featured in the Most Important Americans of the 20th Century issue of Life magazine in 1990, just a testament to how influential this guy really was. He also contributed to Warlock Records' anti-apartheid project Hip Hop Artists Against Apartheid to create the album Return to Planet Rock. He collaborated with the Jungle Brothers. In addition, he organized a concert at Wembley Stadium in London for the African National Congress in 1990 to celebrate Nelson Mandela's release from prison in partnership with John Baker from Green Street Records. Rappers from both countries performed at the concert, giving hip-hop fans their first introductions to Nelson and Winnie Mandela and the ANC. Bambaataa made the decision to launch his own label in 1991 after completing Decade of Darkness 1990 to 2000 on EMI. He founded Planet Rock Music and released his Thy Will Be Funk in 1992. The same year, Tommy Boy re-released the now famous Planet Rock on CD. However, the single What's the Name of This Nation released just 1 year later, suggesting that the label had been unsuccessful. Despite the fact that Bambaataa's recording career dwindled in the early 90s, he was still a busy and popular figure and DJ. However, it wouldn't be until 2016 that some serious allegations that were just bubbling rumors the prior decades were made against Bambaataa, accusing him of essaying several young men over a period of decades. The allegations shook the hip-hop world and raised questions about the culture of SA in that industry, and in particular with all of the artists and rappers that had come under the umbrella of Afrika Bambaataa. The allegations against Afrika Bambaataa were first made public by Ronald Savage, a former member of the Universal Zulu Nation. Savage claimed that Bambaataa had essayed him when he was just 15 years old. According to Savage, the abuse started in 1980 and continued for several years. Bambaataa claims that Ronald Savage's accusations against him are unfounded in an attempt to defame his legacy and reputation in hip-hop. I, Afrika Bambaataa, want to take this opportunity at the advice of my legal counsel to personally deny any and all allegations of any type of essay of anyone, Bambaataa says in a statement to Rolling Stone. These allegations are baseless and are a cowardly attempt to tarnish my reputation and legacy in hip-hop at this time. This negligent attack on my character will not stop me from continuing my battle and standing up against the violence in our communities, the violence in the nation, and the violence worldwide. The problem was that Savage's story was later corroborated by several other men who claimed that they too, as young boys, had been taken advantage of by Bambaataa. The allegations were met with shock and disbelief by many in the hip-hop community. Also, a ton of silence from many rappers. Afrika Bambaataa was revered as a hero and an inspiration by many in the industry, and in some ways he was. But what was he doing behind the scenes? The accusations seemed to come out of nowhere. However, as more and more men came forward with their stories, it became clear that there was a pattern that had gone on for many years. The accusations against Afrika Bambaataa are especially disturbing because of how powerful he really was. Bambaataa wasn't only a respected and influential figure in the hip-hop world, he was also a respected and dangerous figure in the underground crime world. So the fact that Bambaataa reportedly used both of these powers to exploit very vulnerable young boys, allegedly speaking, is not only just a betrayal of trust, but also one of the greatest evils, considering one of the main points that he made was unity and fighting back against the system's violence and discrimination. The accusations against Bambaataa have had far-reaching consequences for the hip-hop community. Many have been forced to confront it head-on, or what some have done is keep their head in the sand. The allegations against Afrika Bambaataa have also profoundly impacted the Universal Zulu Nation. The organization promotes the principles of peace, unity, and love. However, the allegations have called into question the organization's commitment to these principles. After previously disputing allegations made by alleged victims of SA, the Universal Zulu Nation has changed its stance. On behalf of the members of the Universal Zulu Nation worldwide, who have made their voices heard through their chapter leaders, we extend our deepest and most sincere apologies to the many people who have been hurt by the actions of Afrika Bambaataa and the subsequent poor response of our organization to allegations levied against them. To the survivors of apparent SA by Bambaataa, both those who have come forward and others who have not, we are sorry for what you endured and extend our thanks to those who have spoken out for your bravery in bringing to light that which most of us were sadly unaware of and others chose not to disclose. As a result, many members of the organization have distanced themselves from Bambaataa. This resulted in new leadership, and everyone who's accused and who helped to cover up the allegations has either resigned on their own or been fired. While there is yet to be charges placed on Afrika Bambaataa, and some have said he's fled the country several years ago to avoid any potential charges that may come in the future, we can't ignore that Bambaataa's contributions to hip-hop are immense. As dark as it is, with some people saying that this was one of hip-hop's biggest secrets, and being complicit in that is beyond evil. It is important to acknowledge and recognize his role in developing hip-hop while also making sure to hold him accountable for the immense amounts of harm he may have caused if he is guilty. The story of hip-hop's origins really demonstrates the transformative power of art and culture to bring people together and heal communities, but the darkness and abuse that relates back to Afrika Bambaata's allegations is also a bit synonymous with where this was born from. An abuse and neglect by the government and the nation to a certain group of people in certain communities. And despite its humble beginnings, hip-hop has become a multi-billion-dollar industry that has given a voice to generations of communities throughout the country. Today, it still inspires and influences new generations of artists and music enjoyers across the world. Showing the power of creativity and expression can overcome even the most challenging circumstances. The history of hip-hop is a testament to the resilience and creativity of the human spirit and the potential of art to transcend even the most difficult circumstances. Make sure to subscribe for more.